Hey guys, welcome back to another review. I haven't done one of these in a really long time, but I did the review for the classic Nintendo Switch, and I had to do the review for the Nintendo Switch Lite. When I first heard about it, I wasn't too sure what the whole point was, but the more research I did, and the more that I looked at how I used my Switch, it just made perfect sense for me. So let's go into some details and talk about what's good, what's bad, and is it worth having the Nintendo Switch Lite. The Nintendo Switch has made a lot of waves in the gaming community, not just because of Nintendo's great games, but because of how innovative this console is. Every company has tried to release some kind of a handheld that's like having a home console on the go. The Switch was the first console to actually be a home console on the go. You could both dock it and undock it and play it wherever you wanted. The only downside was there have been some issues with the Joy-Cons and the connections. It also wasn't exactly pocketable, so Nintendo decided to make a huge change in order to address some of these problems. The first thing I noticed when I picked up my Nintendo Switch Lite was the fact that the box is so much smaller than I expected. I did expect it to be smaller, I just didn't realize how much smaller it would be. You have to remember though that the Switch came with a dock and it also came with an HDMI cable. The Switch Lite has neither of these. It literally comes with the console, the piece of paper with the warranty information, and the plug. And that's it. So the box is way smaller. And this is just the beginning of how much of a difference the Switch Lite is versus the regular Switch. So the Switch Lite has done a few things in order to make it more appealing to certain types of people. The biggest thing is obviously it is smaller. But the other thing they've done is actually reduce the price. Now they didn't just reduce the price and decide, well, the smaller one is cheaper. They had to cut a few corners in order to make the price come down to where it is. And let me tell you, it's actually quite a big difference in price. So what did they cut out? Well, they had to cut out the IR sensor. If you look at the bottom of a regular Switch, on the right-hand Joy-Con, you actually see a little piece of plastic. It's like a little window, and that's actually an IR sensor. It hasn't really been used by many games. The only one that I really know of is the 1-2 Switch game and the Labo games. 1-2 Switch used it for like a chewing game, which I never actually tried. I never bothered buying that game. And it's also used for the Labo. The Labo actually uses that in order to measure different distances. So I know things like the piano or the gun for the Labo VR. It has little reflectors that the IR sensor reads, and based on what it reads, it's going to do different things in your game. Well, they got rid of that on the Switch Lite because it wasn't really needed. It's not something that's used very often, and unfortunately the Switch Lite doesn't really work with the Labo, so it was a corner that they decided to cut. The biggest corner that they probably cut, at least in my opinion, is the fact that they got rid of the HD Rumble. We all know that HD Rumble is not everything that Nintendo promised, but it is a pretty nice feature. On a bit of a side note, if you guys play Super Mario Maker 2, go through a pipe and hold the Joy-Con to your ear. Even press it up against your ear and listen really carefully. That's right. You can actually hear the same sound effect you hear when you go in a pipe going through the HD Rumble. It's a cool little feature that I didn't know until recently. Anyways, the Switch Lite has no rumble whatsoever. Do I agree with this? I probably would have wanted them to add at least one HD rumble motor, maybe in the middle, because you're not removing the Joy-Con, so you don't need both of them. It would have been nice to have one. I am a fan of vibration in video games, and I do miss it. I have noticed it in certain games that it's just not there, but it's something that they had to do in order to reduce the price. The other big change that they've made is actually getting rid of some of the hardware inside that's on the board. Now, according to Spawnwave, by the way, guys, if you don't know Spawnwave, go check him out because he's amazing. Not that he needs my shout out, but still, he's just amazing. He actually took apart his Switch Lite. Whew, I don't have the heart to do that. I don't know how he did it. Anyways, and inside, he actually noticed that there are some chips missing that are what actually controls the video out. So this Switch, unfortunately, will never do video out unless somebody does some kind of homebrew hacking and resoldering and everything. But as it stands right now, plugging in USB 3 to HDMI will do nothing. There are people that have actually plugged in their Switch Lite into their dock, and nothing happens. The Switch Lite just charges. The hardware just isn't there. It's another way that Nintendo decided to save some money. So, let's talk about the biggest difference in the Switch and Switch Lite. The size. The Switch Lite is considerably smaller compared to the regular Switch. I considered the Switch a portable console because I used it all the time. But when you compare it to the Switch Lite, it's shocking how much smaller they were able to make it. I don't own my PS Vita anymore, but I remember it being a very similar size, so they actually were able to reduce it quite a bit. Yeah, they kind of got rid of the Switch portion of the Nintendo Switch, but it's really cool to know that you can get the full AAA access on the go. You could do that with the Switch, but like I said, the Switch wasn't exactly portable. You still needed to carry it in a bag, or you still needed to put it in, those 1990s big flare-out pants with the giant pockets, because it wasn't exactly small enough to be portable. Now this one is, but you can still play things like Breath of the Wild, or Mario Kart 8, or, Xenoblade Chronicles 2 on the go. It reads the exact same cartridges, and it plays the exact same games that you can download. So it really does bring a new portability to the portable side of the Switch. I think this is really the official way that they're killing off the 3DS. I know Nintendo says that the 3DS isn't dead, but why would you bother buying a 3DS when you could own a portable Nintendo Switch? And your kids can take that anywhere, and they could just throw it in a pocket and it'll go. Now, comparing the Switch to the Switch Lite as far as the shape of the console goes, it's strange. When I saw the images, I looked at the Switch Lite almost like a toy. It felt like a Fisher-Price version. When you see the Legos, and then you see the Mega Bloks, and you go, the Mega Bloks are like the more childish version of Legos. I thought the same thing when I saw the commercials. But now that I've actually held a Switch Lite in my hands, that's not the case at all. I actually prefer the Switch Lite's look versus the regular Switch. The Switch Lite feels very sturdy. It's also got this beautiful anti-slip paint. I don't know what it would be called, but it feels almost rubbery, which makes me feel really secure when I'm holding my Switch. It's a really nice fit. They've also reduced a lot of the weight in the Switch, obviously by removing all those components, and it feels like it's the perfect weight. It feels really well balanced, and my hands don't feel tired while holding it. Another thing is, we've all heard of the issues with the plastic on the original Switch. It cracked, the vents would fall off. I've had that issue. We've also had, the rails for the Joy-Cons come loose and they just pop out. None of that seems to be an issue with the new Switch Lite. The shell is shaped differently, so it feels like the grill is going to have more support, so it's going to be less likely to break. And obviously, it's all one unit, so you don't have to worry about the Joy-Cons eventually coming loose. I know out of my own personal experience, when I'd be sitting on my couch playing and I would try to get comfortable, I would always be worried because I was putting a lot of strain on one side of the Switch as I was using my other hand to move around. Well, I don't have to worry about that with the Switch Lite. The Switch Lite, it's all one piece, so I never feel like I'm going to strain it by holding with one hand. It feels great. So we all know that the Switch Lite does not have removable Joy-Cons. They're just kind of built into the console. But there is one difference between the Joy-Cons. The left Joy-Con on the regular Switch has 4 buttons that represent a D-pad but aren't really a D-pad. So games like Street Fighter are really hard to play. Now the Switch Lite actually has a D-pad. I'm not a Street Fighter player, so I can't speak about how amazing this D-pad is or not, but I think that the D-pad is pretty good. I enjoy it for the games that I play, and I just enjoy a D-pad over the buttons. I'm really excited about playing some more Mario Maker, because now that I have an actual D-pad, I can, work on my online levels so I can become S-rank. I think it's really cool. Another little feature is that the face buttons on the right-hand side, they seem to be a little bit bigger, or maybe they're recessed a little bit less. I don't know what it is, but they feel a little bit nicer. And I think my favorite feature is that the home button has been moved just a little bit, so it just feels a little bit easier to hit. But overall, it's about the same size. The face buttons didn't get crammed together because it's a smaller console. They actually left everything spaced generally the same. just the shape of the console is smaller, but the buttons and everything and the layout seem to be about the same size. So don't worry, you guys, you're not going to be compromised if you've got big old massive hands. If you could use the regular Switch, you'll be able to use this one too. So now when you compare the two screens side by side, they both seem to be just as bright. One doesn't seem to be doing anything more important than the other as far as brightness goes, or just overall saturation. Although some people have reported that they do see a bit more warmth when it comes to the original Nintendo Switch, and the color seems to be a little bit cooler on the Switch Lite. I didn't really notice a difference, but I don't own two copies of the same game, so I'm not able to test two games at the same time to compare the colors. But, I mean, I've done photography for years, and I don't see a gigantic difference, so the average Joe probably won't. Obviously, if you do a lot of video editing and you're a big color fanatic, then you might notice a bit of a difference, but I didn't. The one thing that is different, though, is the fact that the screen is almost a full inch smaller. I don't remember the exact measurements, so don't quote me on that, but I know it's pretty close to an inch in difference for size. Now that doesn't sound like a lot, because obviously it's diagonal, so that means it's just a small margin around the edges that's smaller on the new Switch Lite. But that makes a huge impact on how sharp the screen looks. Both screens are actually 720p, but reducing that screen by that little actually adds a huge amount of sharpness to the image. The image is well balanced too. It seems like Nintendo did a lot of research when it comes to how much they could reduce the size without making it uncomfortable. I really believe that if they went any smaller, it would be really hard to see things on the screen. But you can still read all the fine print, and the image still looks just as clear, if not clearer. And that actually makes the screen look like it's a higher quality screen, despite it not really being a difference. Well guys, those are my thoughts on the Nintendo Switch Lite. If you guys were on the fence on whether or not to buy it, I hope my video helped you guys make a decision, or at least gave you more of an idea of what the Nintendo Switch Lite is all about. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you guys leave a like. If you didn't like it, then leave a dislike, that's perfectly fine. It'll let me know that something is wrong. And leave a comment down below. If you guys are going to get this console, tell me down below what color you're going to get. And if it's your second Switch, or if it's the first time you're going to jump into this world. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me. Don't forget that I stream about 5 days a week, and I'm going to try really hard to do more of these videos, because I love doing this stuff for you guys. Well, that's it from me. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time. Launch title.